Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, if you're the kind of person who is just totally fascinated by the towering skylines of the world's biggest cities, you are absolutely going to love what we're diving into today. We're exploring the giants that never were, the unbuilt mega skyscrapers. These are colossal structures that lived entirely on paper, maybe in some spectacular architectural renderings, or sometimes as literally just a massive, expensive hole in the ground before reality came crashing down. The sheer scale and audacity of the architecture we're about to look at is just staggering.
5,280 feet. Just let that number sink in for a second. 5,280 feet is exactly 1 mile. Now picture this, it's the 1950s, and a proposal is actually put forward for a tower that would stretch a full mile straight up into the clouds. I mean, it sounds like pure science fiction today, let alone 70 years ago, right?
Section 1. The Mile High Dream.
And that brings us to our first truly epic vision, Frank Lloyd Wright's legendary project known as the Illinois, proposed back in 1956 for Chicago. Obviously, Wright is already one of the greatest architects in history, but this is what pure, unfiltered architectural ambition looks like. We aren't just talking about a tall box. Wright designed a structure with 528 stories. He even included internal roads so cars could actually drive inside the thing. Now, what's really interesting about this is how he planned to keep a mile-high needle from snapping in the wind. It required an unimaginably deep base for stability, and he even proposed early concepts for tuned mass dampers. You know, that stabilizing technology that wouldn't actually become common in real skyscrapers for decades. Basically, Wright wanted to condense entire cities vertically to save the beautiful natural horizontal landscapes that he loved so much.
To put that scale into perspective, just think about Wright's 1956 vision of the Illinois at 5,280 feet and compare it to the current undisputed king of the sky, the Burj Khalifa. The Burj is a literal marvel of modern engineering, right? Yet it stands at less than half the height of Wright's proposal from over half a century ago. He was dreaming up a building more than twice the size of our greatest modern achievement. Absolutely wild.
Section 2. Early Visionary Giants. A History of Ambition.
You see, chasing the sky isn't just a modern phenomenon. Let's move through the timeline and see how this builds, because the obsession with mega-tall structures spans the entire 20th century, from 1908 right through the turbulent 1930s, all the way to the post-war optimism of 1956. It's this deeply human obsession that just keeps coming back, generation after generation.
So kicking things off in 1908, we have Antoni Gaudí's Hotel Treccione, proposed for New York City. And yes, that's the exact same visionary Gaudí who designed the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. He imagined this wild, organic skyscraper for what is now the World Trade Center site. It would have reached roughly the height of the Eiffel Tower, but entirely wrapped in his signature, flowing, natural curves. Ultimately, it remained just a stroke of genius on paper. It's a pretty perfect reminder of how visionary designs from artistic geniuses often violently clash with the rigid, practical realities of city building.
Then, jumping to the 1930s, we have the Palace of the Soviets in Moscow. Now, this was designed to be a massive ideological powerhouse. We're talking a 1,300-plus-foot megastructure crowned with an enormous statue of Lenin, specifically meant to broadcast political strength for miles around. And construction actually began. But fate had other plans. World War II broke out, steel and materials were urgently diverted to the war effort, and the project was entirely scrapped. In a pretty huge twist of historical irony, the massive foundation pit for this imposing political statement was eventually turned into a giant, municipal public swimming pool.
Section 3. The Modern Mega Boom. The 2000s Era of Hubris.
As we enter the 21st century, the motivations shift away from ideological statements and individual artistic genius and pivot hard toward raw economics. Just think about the sheer vertical dominance proposed during the 2000s boom. We have the Chicago Spire jumping up to 2,000 feet, then Dubai's Nakheel Tower completely shattering the scale at over 3,000 feet, and finally the Azerbaijan Tower pushing past 3,400 feet. These heights didn't just break records, they entirely dwarfed previous historical attempts. The scale of ambition here was fueled by an economic boom that honestly felt like it was never going to end. Take Dubai's Nakheel Tower, for instance, which was announced right at the peak in 2008. The concept was genuinely mind-boggling. 4 distinct towers merged into one gigantic 3,000-plus-foot superstructure. It was meant to be the absolute crown jewel of the city. But then, the global financial crisis hit suddenly and brutally. Dubai's real estate market cooled practically instantly, and the project was dead in the water.
It perfectly illustrates how, even in ground zero of the global skyscraper boom, a sudden economic shock can just instantly ground the tallest of dreams. And the exact same fate met the Azerbaijan Tower. This was planned as a 3,400-foot giant sitting on a completely man-made archipelago called the Khazar Islands in the Caspian Sea. It was one of those projects that promised to completely reshape the geography and economy of an entire region. But, once again, it was entirely at the mercy of perfect economic timing. When oil prices fiercely fluctuated, the financial feasibility just vanished, and the massive tower was permanently derailed.
Section 4. The Chicago Spire. A masterpiece halted.
Okay, let's dive into this specific case, because it actually broke ground before failing. Designed by the legendary architect Santiago Calatrava, the Chicago Spire was going to be an absolute masterpiece. It was planned to reach 2,000 feet, which would have easily made it the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere. And it wasn't just your standard glass box either. It featured this gorgeous, elegant, twisted design that Calatrava said was inspired by Native American smoke signals. It was slated to be filled with ultra-luxury condos and a high-end hotel. The ambition, the location, the design, it was literally perfect.
But here is the stark, brutal reality of what actually happened. Instead of the soaring 2,000-foot twisting architectural marvel that the city of Chicago was promised, they got a giant, gaping hole in the ground. Construction started in 2007 with a massive foundation, but the 2008 financial crisis wiped out the developer's funding, entirely crushing that beautiful design. It sat as just a hole for years.
Section 5. Why Towers Fall Short. The Reality Check.
We've seen artistic dreams and massive economic centerpieces all fail. Why does this keep happening? So, the crucial point here is that every single mega skyscraper must survive a brutal four-step gauntlet to become a reality. Step 1 is economics. Recessions, funding shortfalls, or even just nervous developers will kill most projects while they're still on paper. Step 2 is engineering. At these extreme heights, dealing with wind shear, earthquakes, and the astronomical cost of specialized materials becomes an absolute nightmare. Step 3 is politics. Zoning laws, sudden government shifts, or fierce local opposition can halt a project overnight. And finally, Step 4 is timing. The technology, market demand, and developer ambition all have to align perfectly. If even one of those steps fails, the tower stays on paper.
Section 6. Chasing the Skies Today. Legacy and Future Tech.
But look, just because these structures weren't built doesn't mean they don't matter. These failed projects actually serve as incredible incubators for future architectural technology. Because of the hard lessons learned from the giants that never were, modern priorities have significantly evolved. Today, it's not just about raw height for the sake of it. The focus has shifted strongly towards sustainability, creating vibrant mixed-use spaces, and really enhancing urban livability. We definitely still see massive, evolving projects, like the Dubai Creek Tower, pushing boundaries. But now that ambition is driving incredible future tech. We're talking about integrating large-scale 3D printing and pushing for true carbon-neutral super-tall designs. Taking the pure height record isn't the only goal anymore, but the sheer ambition to reach it, that continues to push the entire construction industry forward.
I really love this quote from our source material because it just hits the nail on the head. It says, "Architecture is optimistic. They show human creativity at its boldest, even when reality says, not yet." And I think that's absolutely crucial. We really shouldn't view these unbuilt skyscrapers just as expensive failures. Honestly, they're profound testaments to human imagination. They represent our inherent optimism, our desire to reach higher, and our relentless drive to innovate, even when the world is standing there telling us the timing isn't right.
So, I want to leave you with a question to mull over after seeing the immense scale of what could have been. Which unbuilt skyscraper fascinates you the most? Is it the absolute sheer audacity of Frank Lloyd Wright's Mile High, Illinois? Is it the beautiful, tragic near miss of the twisting Chicago Spire? Or maybe it's something else we touched on today. Just take a second to think about how incredibly different our cities would look today if even just one of these had made it all the way through the gauntlet. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep looking up.